Welcome to another episode of Listen, Learn, Love, hosted by Richard Ostler. My guest on today's podcast are a married couple, Taylor and Kasey Cordova. Is that how I say your last name?
Yep, that's right.
Welcome, Taylor, and welcome, Kasey.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
This is not an LGBTQ story today for our listeners. It's a story about a couple that came together and ended up in a temple marriage, but it didn't start that way. And Kasey, who's here, was not active in the church and not very well connected to the church. And Taylor met Kasey at age about 18 and is an active LDS person. And they're going to talk about their story, coming from different places religiously, but falling in love and then having to navigate that. And we're going to talk about Kasey's journey towards the church and Taylor's journey to receive personal revelation about the goodness of her now husband. So with that, Kasey offered a wonderful prayer, and we pray that the Spirit will be here. And one of the reasons I love this story is it's not a traditional story. And I think sometimes we have these checklist sort of traditional stories where everything checks in the right order, but this is not one of those stories. And I think that's important to hear these stories and how God works through people and bringing people together, and not everybody is going to fit the same set of checkbox, and I think that's part of God's plan. So let's talk, Taylor. You met Kasey when you were 18. Will you tell our listeners how you met your boyfriend and then husband?
Yes. So I don't know if anyone out there has heard of Red Mango, but it's a frozen yogurt shop. There's a few locations in Utah, but Kasey was a manager there, and I'd come in all the time because the yogurt is just super good.
What was your favorite flavor?
Definitely peanut butter.
Peanut butter.
Yeah.
That's all she eats.
And that's how we got to know each other, started talking. I eventually had two friends help me leave my number on a napkin for him.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to make them do the work.
And then he ended up calling me an hour later after that, and it kind of just started from there.
So you're 20 at the time, Kasey. I think. Yep. Are you in school at UVU or already graduated?
Yeah, I was in my end of the first, beginning of the second year at UVU in the aviation program.
Okay. And for our listeners, you want to become an airline pilot? Yep.
Yeah, just been a flight instructor down at UVU for the past 2 years. I've been training since like 2012, and now actually this Friday I'm going to be training at SkyWest to be a first officer pilot.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Way to follow your dreams.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you have this dream at age 12, 10, 14, or does this happen later in high school?
Yeah, I kind of more in high school. Just kind of went with it. I always thought it'd be kind of a good idea. I know they had a good paying job, but who wouldn't want to fly planes? It's more of a hobby than a job. So I always kind of went with it from there.
That is great. So tell us your first memories of Taylor as you're working in Red Mango.
Yeah, Red Mango. Good day. Good times. I worked at Red Mango for about 4 years. It was about the first to second year that she used to come in all the time. She worked at next door at the Costa Vida and also at the Megaplex, but she used to come in all the time. And I just remember seeing her, and she had like the biggest blue eyes, and that was my favorite part about her. That's what made her really stood out. Mm-hmm. But there was always something about her that just kind of seemed more familiar, that it was easy to relate. And she just came in more and more, and she was easy to talk to, and I was working on asking her out, but she kind of beat me to it. I always try to come up with some elaborate plans, but yeah, she kind of beat me to it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I always claim the first move in our relationship.
Way to go, Taylor.
Yeah.
So when you called her, how long until you became sort of, I used to call it Facebook official, or this stage where you're not dating anybody else?
So that's what was weird. Like, it was more for the first month, it was just like a hangout. We never actually went on an official date for like about a month, but like we watched a ton of movies. Her family was, I was always up till like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. after work. And one night I texted her, I was like, hey, you want me to bring some yogurt? Not kind of in a joking way. I didn't think she was actually going to say it. She was like, yeah, come on up. My family's still up. And I was like, what? And it was like 1 a.m. So her family's been up or always up at like 1 or 2 a.m. So we always hung out after work and yeah, just kind of picked up from there. And it took about a month for us to kind of be official, kind of getting to that point with actually going on any official dates. So it was kind of a weird build up to it, but.
And for our listeners, this started you've been married about 1.5 years, and this started about 5 or 6 years ago. So there was about 5 years from being sort of officially dating until you got married. Is that about right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so it was 5 years of us dating. We got married it was we dated for 5 years and got married as we were approaching the 6th year, and then this year we'd be together for 7 years.
So you've got this great foundation. So talk about when you started dating. Did you know at that time you were in different places religiously?
Funny you say that.
Or did you just start dating and then after a period of dating you realized you're in different places?
So Kasey was sneaky.
Not purposely.
Not purposefully, but I distinctly remember one conversation we had. It was like a Saturday. It was kind of late, and I was like, I don't want to get up for 9 o'clock church. It's so early, you know? And then I was like, what time's your church? He's like, oh, it's at 1. So I can stay up till whenever, basically. And then 2 months after that, I found that he wasn't active. So he knew what time his church was very well.
Because all my friends went there. But
all his friends went there, but he told me his church time, but knowing that, yeah, it was just kind of funny how he did that.
What did you think when you found out your boyfriend was not active?
I remember not thinking like it was a deal breaker at that point. We had just been dating for 2 months. It was very new. I liked him. I thought he was enjoyable. I thought he was a good man. I didn't think that meant I had to break up with him at that point. We weren't super serious. As I said, it had just been 2 months. But I do remember in that moment explaining, okay, like, that's great everyone is at different pages, everyone has their own path, but just so you know, like, the gospel is super important to me, and it's something I want in my life, and that's where the path I see myself going in down the road. I remember saying that in that conversation, not in a way that was, well, sorry, like, we can't be together then, but it was more like, this is what I want in my life, so just so you know, like, these are my kind of standards.
Good. Thank you, Taylor. Kasey, did you know you were dating an active LDS?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And did you know this conversation at some point would come?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't like dreading it or anything. I knew it would come up eventually. I thought she kind of knew I was an LDS, but yeah, it didn't really come up. I don't even remember how it came up, but yeah, it wasn't anything I was dreading. Her family always told me, like, you're like, about a year into it, they always told me that you're LDS, you just don't know it yet. And so that's kind of my personality, I guess, but which didn't really bug me that they were saying that I was LDS. It was just more that there's good people and people like me, like, outside the church. It's not just an LDS thing. So that's what kind of bugged me about it. But I always thought it was funny that they told me that.
In this initial stage, when you first realized differences, did you think Taylor was going to end the relationship? Were you fearful?
No, not at all.
Why?
I mean, I figured if it wasn't meant to be, it's not meant to be. Like, everything happens for a reason. And it's kind of funny you say that too, because Taylor was kind of my first, like, official relationship or really serious relationship. And so going into it, like, I didn't expect to date longer than 3 or 4 months just because I hadn't been in very many relationships before. I kind of wanted to see what I wanted. And about 2 or 3 months went by and we're still dating, and then it turned into 5 months and then a year, and we were still dating. And it was because we had a good connection, we were comfortable with each other, but the only thing that was missing was just I wasn't active in the church. So
And you were really kind of way inactive. I don't even know. I think you told us before we went live you were baptized at age 9. But
Right.
you came from a great family, but a family that really didn't identify as LDS. And so it's almost like you were a non-member. Do you feel like you were more like a non-member or just a less active member?
I feel like I was more of a non-member than less active. But
because less active sort of infers you've had some period of activity and some foundation in the church. Why?
right.
It sounds like in your situation that really wasn't the case.
Yeah.
He did have great friends who were LDS, and somewhere that he just was surrounded by really good people of multiple faiths, some close ones being LDS, and we met right after his close friends were left on missions. So where he says he wasn't really a member, a lot of his friends would always talk to him about the gospel, would talk to him, invite him over for, I don't know, whatever things you've told me. His best friend's dad baptized him, that kind of thing. He was surrounded by LDS families that kind of brought that influence into his life, even though he was technically a non-member.
Did you go to your friends' mission openings and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I'd say probably about 80% of my friends were LDS, so farewells and homecomings were a big thing for.
And you grew up in Utah County. What high school?
I went to American Fork High School.
And did your friends invite you to be more active, or?
Oh yeah, all the time. Well, I
or
would
did
say
they just kind of leave it? They just were open if you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, that kind of thing. They were more open. They weren't always asking if I wanted to go to church, but like they were totally open if I wanted to or wanted to come into anything. And they'd always kind of talk about that stuff, and even when I was with them, and they try to get me talking about it or kind of getting to church. They jokingly try to get me to church, but they were totally fine with whatever I wanted to do. So,
do you remember why you weren't engaged in the churches during your high school years?
I'd say so after I was baptized when I was 9, my family still just never went to church. We were always kind of traveling, camping, hunting, and that was kind of our things on weekends. So we never actually were around to go to church, I guess, on Sundays. That was kind of our Sunday fun day. And it never really interested me to going to church that often. Like once in a while, I'd go with my friends once or twice a year just to kind of hang out with them more. But
did you believe in God?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always believed in God and Jesus Christ, and I just never really felt that the church was for me itself, but I always kind of believed in those principles.
As your friends left on missions, did that change your connection to the church? Sometimes I see, high school age men like you that are a little bit connected to church through their friends. Their friends go on missions. That connection kind of ends, so they even are a little further away. Or was it about the same for you?
Yeah, I'd say, I definitely went to church with them more before they left than after. I still had a few friends that would go, but it was about a year after they left. I met Taylor, maybe like 8 months or something like that.
Yeah, it was like 5 months or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely say I didn't go to church after they left that much.
So you had this roughly 5-year engagement,
right?
No, I shouldn't call it engagement. 5-year, relationship, and that's one of the things I like about your stories, because sometimes in our cultural narrative we have really short engagements, and if someone can't figure out a relationship in 2 or 3 months, then it must mean it's not good, and so they should end the relationship. And as a singles word bishop, I've just seen the Lord works so many different ways in these relationships. I'm very hesitant to be prescriptive and say, well, this is how it should work. And I've always wanted to leave it at the YSAs working with Heavenly Father to figure out their own plan, because my narrow vision of what Heavenly Father wants to accomplish sometimes is culturally driven versus, what his plan is for somebody. So maybe 5 years ago, I would have heard somebody had a 5-year friendship and say, well, that's a stagnant relationship, or that means it's not any good, or, it doesn't fit. But now I've had so much more experience with different people, I would never say that. And I would just say this is part of your beautiful relationship that at times I'm sure was difficult and times beautiful. Talk about when in the relationship, the differences in your faith became kind of a tension point. in the relationship are potentially a deal breaker? And that's maybe a question for you, Taylor.
I remember the longer our relationship was going on, I got more anxiety about it going somewhere. And I say that because, like, I feel like, I don't know, because I grew up in Alpine, Utah. It's very LDS community. Like, the culture is very, the gospel is very strong there, but the culture is also very strong there. And I think in the beginning I had in my mind that my relationship needed to have a timeline. If it wasn't where I needed to be at a year and a half, like, or 2 years or whatever, like, I needed to move on, or I needed to find someone who was on the same page as me. And I think I was feeling that way at that point. So I had graduated high school. It was my first year of college. We were still dating, but
and you ended up graduating from the University of Utah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. My first year of college, we were still dating, but as we were going into my second year of college, we broke up.
Did you break it off? Was it a joint break off?
It was kind of more of a mutual thing. We kind of both felt it wasn't really going anywhere. And
was that because of the difference in religion, or was it broader than that?
It was mainly because of that, but then also just it didn't feel right at the time. We were both kind of getting exhausted, I guess you could say, or
it was.
We just knew something needed to change. So once I found out he wasn't active, though I still appreciated him, loved him for who he was, that was something that was really important to me long term. So as our relationship started getting longer, we started having more conversations. It was a lot of me inviting Kasey to church and him saying no. It was a lot of me saying, just give it a try. Like, you don't really know the truth until you, like, put faith into action and figure out answers for yourself. So if you put in some effort to see, and then if it's a no, okay, we can go our separate ways, but at least, like, would be great to, if you want to know, like, put in some effort to know, and then that way I can know. I just said no a lot of times.
You're doing great, Taylor.
That way we can take our journeys, whether they be together or separate, but we know we have confidence in what we're doing because we've had those answers, and we know, like, what we want and if it's the church or not.
How did Kasey respond to that?
Well, we broke up. So
that was about 2 years into it.
That was about 2 years into us dating. That he would often say, I'm happy with where I'm at. I don't feel like I need the church. And I didn't want Kasey to do it because I felt he needed it. He was a very wonderful human being without it. But it was something, a marriage in the gospel with Christ at the center, in the temple with all those blessings attached, is something that was incredibly important to me, something that I knew that I wanted. And when he kept saying no to invitations or not putting an effort to actually figure out if it was true or not, I felt stuck. I felt like, okay, well, if effort's not going to be put in on his end to figure it out, it was stagnant at that point. I think that answered your question.
That did. So it sounds like that led to a breakup.
Yeah. So
were you in love with Taylor Kasey at that point?
Very much so.
So you're in love with this guy. And
so it was very hard because...
And you're in love with your vision for your plan and what you want to do from a gospel standpoint.
Right. I felt like a common conversation I had with God was, how can I be in love with someone so much and have it not be right? Meaning like,
just say that again.
how could I be in love with someone so much and it not lead to where I want, like not be a temple marriage or something like that. It was so hard for me to juggle my feelings for Kasey and what I knew was right. But I knew that if I acted in faith and stayed true to my beliefs and my standards, that it would work out how God would have it, not necessarily how I wanted it. I mean, sorry, not necessarily how, well, yeah, it wouldn't necessarily work out how I wanted it. Maybe it might have not been with Kasey, but I knew it would work out how God wanted it. And that brought me peace. Because at that point I was just like, I just want to do what you want me to do, God. And I don't know what that is. So I'm taking a chance
This
here.
led to a breakup.
Mm-hmm.
How long was the breakup?
Was it like August or?
I think it was about 7 or 8 months.
That's a long breakup.
Months, yeah.
And were you interacting during the breakup? Some breakups you sort of are interacting.
My family always jokes that we might have broken up, but he didn't break up with my family. He was probably still over at my parents' house the same amount.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 times away.
He, as I mentioned kind of before when we were talking, he's someone who, when he builds relationships with people, he's 100% genuine and into those people, like wholeheartedly. And after 2 years of being in a relationship with me, and by that happening to my family, there's no way he was gonna not like there's no way he's gonna let those relationships go, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. So what was your mindset when this breakup started, Kasey? Were you in love with Taylor?
I mean, I knew I loved her. I think we told each other that we loved each other after about a year or a little over a year, but it didn't really feel right. Like I felt like even a month before we actually broke up that something kind of needed to change. Maybe we needed a break, kind of figure each other out, especially for me too, because I had no idea what I wanted. I'm the most indecisive person in the world, but yeah. And then when it comes to like the most important decision of your life, it gets pretty confusing, but I knew we kind of needed to break up. Going into it too, like I said, like 3 or 4 months, I didn't think we'd be dating past 3 or 4 months because I just wanted to figure stuff out. And so when we did break up, I thought I would have been dating a ton of people, kind of really trying to figuring everything out. And even 2 or 3 months into it, like I maybe have been on one date. And then after like 8 months, still kind of the same thing where she ended up going on like 25 or 30 different dates. And I knew it wasn't right for us then. That space part really helped, especially when she was going to the U, because that helped that we didn't really see each other for like 2 weeks to 3 months, or I mean a month. We still hung out once in a while, but just more as friends. But yeah, it just kind of kept going on like that for 8 months, and I was fine with her dating other people. I didn't really feel anything with it. And until about 8-9 months later. Then
what got you back together again?
I would have you, okay, rewind a little bit. I wanted to comment on something
Good.
you said.
We can go ahead.
Is when we broke up, I never got an answer that was no. This whole time I've just been praying for an answer. Is Kasey the one I'm supposed to be with? Is he not? And the whole time I never really got a yes or a no. But I got a keep going. It wasn't like, because a no would be like stop, right? And a yes would be, yeah, he's the one, your eternal companion, keep going, right? But I just got keep going. And so when we broke up, I still hadn't gotten a no. It was just keep going. I got break up. I got the answer break up. I never got the answer, no, you're not meant to be together. And so that was also confusing, because I'm getting this answer break up and date other people, but I also have not gotten a no. So I still have some attachment to Kasey, and then God's wanting me to like explore my options and date other people. That's not something that's easy to juggle. I often told Kasey that when I'd be on dates with other people, it was, and this was not because those people I were on dates with were boring or bad men or anything like that. I just would always think of Kasey. And these people I went on dates with, you know, kind of more being quote unquote in the norm. RMs,
return missionaries.
Yeah, RMs lived the gospel their whole lives, had maybe LDS families, or some here, some there, right? And it was hard because I was doing what I thought was right, but not really feeling a connection with anyone, but still having a connection with a person who, quote unquote, wasn't right for me at the time. And that was hard for me to juggle because I was trying to put myself out there, but I also felt shielded and like that I couldn't totally be myself because I still had part of me, I still had my foot in another shoe. I still had one foot pointing the other way. And so it was hard to...
Did dating these return missionary guys make you appreciate Kasey more?
Yes. And as I said, it wasn't because these RMs were rude or any sort of the word. It just pointed out to me the things I loved about Kasey.
Tell us one or two of those things.
He is someone who is incredibly thoughtful and respectful. He does things for the best intentions for other people. All his actions are because he thinks about how other people would respond or what other people would do or how much it would mean to them. That's Kasey. And so like it's hard for me on second or third dates when I'm like, but Kasey does. And it was an unfair judgment on my part because I was comparing someone I had known 2 years and loved to someone I'd been going on a second date with. So it was technically very unfair to those people, but it was just like a tug of war back and forth of like what I should be doing. So it was really difficult. But yeah, another thing that I really appreciate about him is his because he notices other people well, he hops on any opportunity to help anyone. He is the definition of service. And it's something that has continued to be a part of our relationship and our marriage, and that's something that has like really I value about him. That's
very helpful. And I know I made the rule when I came home from my mission I was going to marry a returned missionary sister. Mm-hmm. And then after about 5 years, I thought that's a really dumb rule because it may keep me from marrying the very person God wants me to marry, mm-hmm. because I have this checklist and I think the assumption of the checklist is that it would help me find the person that had the Christ-like attributes I was looking for. So the checklist in itself was a means to the end, but then I realized the checklist mentality was flawed.
Right.
And partly because I dated some really incredible women that didn't serve missions, and I dated some women that had served missions that didn't have some of the attributes I was looking for. And I'm sure even though I served a mission, some of the things that God wanted me to develop still had not been developed just because I served a mission. So that was part of my learning back in the day. And I married an incredible woman that didn't serve a mission. And talk about then what caused you to get back together again? Was it one event, or was it just a text one night, or what happened to say we're going to start dating again?
You want me to go for it?
Yeah, you can go for it. Butcher this part.
Well, I mean, like I was saying, she was dating a ton of other people, a ton of other guys that didn't really affect me that much. I didn't really get jealous that much until she started dating this one guy. They started going on like one or two more dates, and we were texting each other one night, and I think she called me, or I called her, one of the two, but she told me one day that she actually started liking him, and like she was actually starting to develop feelings for him, and they were still going on dates, and I think they were going on a date that night, and I still didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, okay. And then she told me again, I think it was later that night, but she told me on the phone, and something inside me just changed when she said that she actually started liking him, and something in me just got either really jealous or just like, what am I doing? Like, this incredible girl is gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna lose this incredible girl. Like, I didn't think I even wanted her, but now I really do. And I don't know if it was like a case of you can't have, or you want what you can't have, or it just kind of occurred to me like we really did have that strong of a connection. But even leading up to that point, it was, I didn't really think that we were meant to be together because I was an LDS and I couldn't, not that I didn't understand, but it didn't make sense to me why somebody just couldn't accept someone for the way they were, which she totally did. It was just the whole LDS like principles of you're going to be together forever and you're meant to be married in the temple, that kind of stuff. I just didn't see myself doing it, but that's what I would say would probably change it is when she started.
Did you act on that? Did you tell Taylor how you felt, or did you interact more, or did you still
probably later after that?
But something changed inside.
Yeah, after something changed, like I remember I was talking to her on the phone, and when she did tell me that, like, started tearing up, and just something really was tugging me inside, like, what are you doing? Wake up. Sort of thing. And I told her later that week, and we'd still like hang out, and I think I was more resisting my feelings toward her because I wanted her to be happy, and I also was really happy that she was dating this guy. So I wasn't really willing to tell her how I really felt or what was building up, but I think it was more confusing for myself because I didn't think I wanted to be with her, and it just kind of gradually became more of an overwhelming feeling. And it took about a month or two of them dating where I kind of realized, like, yeah, I want to keep dating you. I want to be with you. And
when did you sense something was changing in Kasey, Taylor?
Well, I remember a conversation we had one night. So yeah, there was this guy I started dating, and I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of rude to Kasey. I wanted him to be jealous. As I told you,
Pretty honest.
I kind of still had feelings.
This is the Honesty Podcast, so you're in good territory.
I wanted him to be jealous. So I was very honest. I would tell him the dates I went on. I would tell him what we did. I'd tell him if we held hands, if we kissed. I would tell Kasey everything. And most people, when I tell them that, they're like, that's so rude. But I mean, I'm married to him now, right? So that probably came off wrong, but
you're just fine.
Once about 2 months into this guy and I were dating, and I'd been telling Kasey what he mentioned, and I remember one night he was over at my parents' house and I had come home and he had seen me with this other guy that I'd been talking about that I was dating. In fact, because I told you, Kasey always came over to our parents' house and stuff. So I actually came over to my parents' house with this other guy, and Kasey saw me and him together. And that's the night we had a conversation where he kind of broke down and was like, I don't know what to do. I love you. And that's when I kind of was like, I love you too, but like the ball is in your court. Like we've had this conversation before. What things
the ball meaning the church.
Yes.
And you've got to address if you're going to find out if this church is for you.
Yeah, you need to
not the ball like me and your commitment to me. It's sort of this unresolved issue that needs to be resolved before this relationship can go forward.
Right. And I told him, I was like, we've had this conversation before, and like, I want this to work. If you want this to work, I need you to at least try and figure this out. I need you to at least put in some effort to figure out not only if the church is true, but if you want it in your life. So about after we had that conversation, I I think it was like a month after that. No, maybe like 2 months after that, a month and a half.
Sure.
We began dating again. And that was because he had reached out to my uncle to get a blessing. And he told me that he was going to make an effort to figure it out. One thing I remember about that blessing and still like repeats over in my brain sometimes.
So he invited you to the blessing. He reached out to your uncle.
Yeah, he reached out to my uncle, and I was there at the blessing. And one thing that was said in that blessing was, Kasey, if you strengthen your relationship with Christ, your relationship with Taylor will fall into place. And that brought me a lot of hope. And I think it's interesting that it's if you strengthen your relationship with Christ. It wasn't if you get all your questions answered. It wasn't, if you just know that Joseph Smith was a true prophet, right? It was just strengthen your relationship with Christ and it will fall into place, which I think brought me a lot of hope in that moment that it would come together. I still, at that point, had not gotten a yes or no, but I had hope.
What caused you to reach out and ask for a blessing, Kasey?
What was kind of tough because I didn't want to, like, even before then, I didn't really think the church was for me. I didn't really have a desire to go to church. I didn't really feel like I belonged there, which is funny because, like, a lot of LDS people, at least in the wards that I went to, were way welcoming and, like, not judgmental at all, but it's just I never felt like I belonged there. Yeah, after she started dating this guy, I was okay with it. Again, I wanted her to be happy, but something really, my mind was just kind of fighting itself, like torn between what I not had planned, but like I was always just kind of like, I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with where I'm at in my life, like she was saying. I'm okay with my lifestyle. So I'm a person that's not as great with change, I guess. I mean, I'm okay with change, but it's harder for me to change. I really have to do it deliberately and
it's good insight.
Genuinely, I guess. But like she was saying that week that she told me that she liked this other guy, I kind of broke down and I ended up asking her uncle for a blessing and then my two best friends for a blessing. And both of them were pretty good, but I can't even remember what he said on them, but something after that just felt a lot better. Like, it's okay to give it a try. And I didn't want to give the church a chance because of her, like just for her. I wanted to do it for the right reasons. I wanted to do it for me.
Seems like the kind of guy you are.
Yeah. I wanted to do everything genuinely and not bite me in the butt 10 years down the road when I didn't really feel it. But, where was I? I just lost my train of thought.
I to me, your willingness to want a blessing shows great humility and a great desire and a willingness to open this door. Mm-hmm. And so I look at that as the seed. We were talking about the seed in our home last night. The seed is the word of God, and it takes faith to have the seed grow. But what you did was, to me, a demonstration of faith. And you had enough faith in the priesthood of these blessings that it might help you. And I like the way you didn't think, well, I've got to be an active LDS person to get a blessing from an LDS person, that I'm worthy of God's input in my life, just how I am. And I don't have to sort of meet some criteria before he'll talk to me and help me. So I love that part of your story. It's a really good, and I love what the blessings said about coming into Christ, and you'll be able to, more, you said it better than I did, know more about Taylor and be able to come into Taylor and your relationship improve. So I don't know how long you were in this state until, I don't know which came first, an engagement or Kasey fully being in the church.
So once he started figuring, like, taking steps, which he did so very methodically and patiently with me and himself, because I would be always asking him, like, how's it going? Like, you know, like, do you want to talk about anything? You know, do you have questions? You know, like, can I be of any help to you? So we got back together, I guess, 2.5 years, and then it was 2.5 years more until we got engaged. Right?
So it was 2.5 years.
Yeah. And that's because Kasey intentionally, as I said, was very, very methodical and genuine in his process to find the answers for himself. And he did not want to propose until he knew what he wanted with the gospel and with me. And I had so much trust in him and appreciation in him for that. I knew he wasn't going to propose unless he was committing to both me and living the gospel.
How did you navigate that? Because people were falling in love and getting married and having their first child, and you're still in this pre-engaged. I call the stage you're in sometimes the pre-engaged stage, where there's this kind of understanding that if everything works out, we're going to get engaged, you get married. And I don't know if you'd call it the pre-engaged stage, because you've got to figure out your faith.
We had a lot of stages.
But how did you navigate? Because all these, you know, in our culture, like, people are, you know, don't even know each other, fall in love, get engaged, get married, and are pregnant, and you're still in this 2.5 year, you know, long-term relationship. How did you navigate that? Because I think it's helpful for other listeners that are trying to be really patient as things may or may not work out.
It was really hard.
It's honest.
It was incredibly exhausting. It was faith trying, but it was also incredibly rewarding. One thing that I would note is once Kasey said that he wanted to give it a try, it was about 6 months later that he got a calling. About, I think, 6 months after that, he got the priesthood.
So trying, you actually went, Kasey. It sounds like you don't get a calling unless you show up, I assume.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't just, on the do not contact list, they thought, we got an idea for you. We're going to call you to something.
That's how they get you.
That's cool, Kasey. And I assume this is the Aaronic priesthood, because you've never been connected to church. So you got the Aaronic priesthood. So he's making sort of milestone progress.
Yeah. And attached with those things came reassurances from God for me. As I said, throughout this whole time, I'm praying, fasting, trying to figure out my answers. And one thing that I learned a lot about in this process was agency. I didn't get answers before Kasey started trying to figure out what he wanted. But once he started making efforts in the church, that's when I got my first yes.
Yes to marry him, or yes to stay in the relationship?
Yes, that I would be with him.
You would be with him.
Yeah. And that was after 2.5 years of praying for that answer. And I attribute that to God. I just can't think of anything else, but agency in that moment is Kasey could have chosen either path. He could have chosen to, you know, do the church path, or he could have chosen to not to. But he was still figuring that out. And at that point in time when I was praying before, God didn't know what Kasey was going to do. I know he wanted, that was maybe a wrong statement. God knew what Kasey was eventually going to do, but he couldn't give me that answer yet because Kasey had his agency. And he could have gone the other direction. He could have chosen not to do the church. But once he started doing the church, once he started learning the gospel, figuring it out for himself, that's when I started getting answers. And it wasn't like small answers. They were very big reassurances from God, multiple in the temple, multiple just on timing. I still remember one where I had been praying and fasting that Kasey could get the priesthood. And I was like, I just want him to get the priesthood. At that point, it had been like 3 years, right? And I'm just like, it would be great, God, if you could nudge Kasey along.
And are you in a singles ward or a resident ward, Kasey?
I was in a singles ward.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd be like, it'd be great.
Different wards?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went with him a lot when he started going, though.
Okay.
When I wasn't up in Salt Lake.
But yeah, so this is kind of Kasey on his own YSA ward.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, I was, praying a lot for him to get the priesthood and fasting for it. And there was a whole week of me praying and praying. And that Sunday I fasted. And that was little did I know Kasey was planning it the whole time. But he surprised me in getting the priesthood. He was like, oh, we have a meeting with the bishop. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, am I supposed to come? And he's like, yeah. And I walk in, and it's his mom, his grandparents, my family, all sitting in there. And I was like, what?
That's cool.
Kasey's getting the priesthood. And he totally had surprised me. And it was a beautiful moment. It's a spirit-filled moment.
I think of Elder Hale's talk, Waiting Upon the Lord, and what you were doing. And one of the things culturally sometimes we do is we love to give advice, and then sometimes you get so much conflicting advice it gives you a headache.
Yes.
Because as people become aware of your situation, I think good and faithful people want to say, and they maybe take their situation and project it on you. And then did that happen, and was that confusing at times? Some people say break up. You've gone, you should never date somebody over a year.
Yes.
And, or you're going to mess up with the law of chastity, and you should not ever date anybody very long. And so how did you manage all those different voices?
Yeah, we got a lot of criticism. My criticism was, the criticism I got is why you're dating someone who isn't active. That was the first main one. And then when they heard how long we'd been dating, they questioned my worthiness, Kasey's worthiness, Kasey's intentions, which drove me bonkers because I knew he was doing it with his whole heart. I knew Kasey's heart, and I knew that.
You knew this good guy's heart.
And I knew that he wasn't going to do it for me. I knew that. And so when people were questioning his intentions, I had close family and close family friends question his intentions, and it broke my heart because I knew for 100% that he was doing it for himself and not for me. And that was really hard. I also had...
that may have, if Kasey's aware of that, that may make it harder for you. You may feel a little resentment towards the church or the church culture or people as you're just doing the best you can.
Right. And honestly, I was kind of used to that because I kind of got that my whole life of people just like, especially when you're a little kid, like little kids are so mean to each other, but like when they find out that you don't go to church, they just, I don't know. I remember being made fun of a lot, or I think I can't remember who it was, but I think it was my brother or me that got headaches all the time, and people would say you get a lot of headaches because you don't go to church. So that kind of stuff we were used to. It didn't bother me at all, but it's just kind of
thick
funny.
Skin.
Yeah,
and I admire with that you still were willing to consider this church that brought you some pain.
Yeah,
and some feeling of not belonging. I think it's hard to, when you used the word belonging earlier, that's so important. Everybody needs to belong, but it makes it harder to belong if we've created this feeling as a young man growing up that you're not welcome.
Right.
Now, I love, back to you, Taylor, I love, as I worked with the YSA, sometimes in our interviews, they would talk about all these voices they'd hear about their situation. And I think, I think you only have personal revelation for you. Even if I were your bishop and I were in the middle of this, I would be very reluctant to say, this is what you ought to do. I never, as a bishop, except maybe in a priesthood blessing when it wasn't me, it was God, I would just try to give principles for people to make their own decisions. They had personal revelation for them, and I didn't. And even though I might see something out of the norm, the longer I served, the more I tried to just not be prescriptive and say, this is what you ought to do. And so I think parents have a voice in there because they know their kids, but as their kids even get older, I've wondered with my children your age, where my personal revelation for them ends and theirs starts. Because as a 5-year-old, I sort of have total personal revelation for them because they don't. And as they age up. So I think one of the things I like about this podcast is sometimes as well-meaning members, we add to your load. And there were a lot of people that added to your load, and probably being well-meaning were not helpful.
Yeah, and I recognize that. I knew when I had family ask me about my relationship with Kasey, I knew it's because they cared.
They cared.
Though some of the comments were hurtful, I know.
What were some of the best comments that people said? For those of our listeners that want to do the right thing and say some things that are helpful.
What helpful was just validation. I think sometimes is like when I would share their story, then they being like, "Wow, that's hard, but how cool that you guys are, figuring this out," and like almost like I don't know, just that validation of like you're doing what you can, like you're giving it your all, like good for you. Like it was encouraging when I'd be like, thank you, like thank you.
Everybody can do that.
Yeah,
too.
just like I don't know, like supporting by validating, I thought was super helpful.
I think that takes discipline to not flip the story to your engagement story or your story. And I think when someone's opening up like you are to a trusted friend, keep it focused on your story and hear their story and validate how they feel. That's really helpful.
Yeah. I actually had a non-LDS friend who did this, and I thought it was so funny, the difference between the people who were LDS, who were kind of giving me, like, more interrogating me, trying to, like, warn me, and then I had friends outside the church who would kind of do those more validating things. But I remember my sophomore year, I was in the service house at the University of Utah. They have learning living communities, and I was in that one. There's 12 of us, only 3 of us were LDS, and we became really close really quickly. I remember within the first week, I had one of my roommates, that's shortly after Kasey and I had just broken up. And so we were getting to know each other, and she would ask, why did you break up? And I told her the reason why. We were on different pages religiously, and it was something that was super important to me, even though I really liked him. And she was so sweet, and she responded, and she was like, props to you for sticking by your beliefs and like going for what you believe. And I understand that could be super hard to give up something you really love. And then she mentioned that she lived with LDS people before who didn't do those same things, and was like, I think it's just refreshing to see people stand by their beliefs. And I don't say that to boast. I say that because just her response to me was so loving and heartfelt compared to some people that weren't. You know what I mean? It was someone who had just met me, known them for maybe a week, and she responded like that, which I think was really sweet.
And I think some of those comments you got were fear-based, and they probably started with love, but I've always felt perfect love casteth out fear. So I think if people were willing to fully hear your story and hear your personal revelation, how you felt, they go, I have less fear here. I'm going to trust Taylor and the Lord that you're close enough with God and receiving revelation that you'll know what to do. Right. Kasey, back to you. We've got like 10 minutes left or so. Was there, when I meet people I'm calling you a convert, that's fine.
We're all converts.
We're all converts. When you finally said, this is my home and I believe, was that a real gradual thing for you?
Oh, absolutely.
Or was there one specific thing that happened that said, I know this is my home?
That's, it would have been nice if there was one specific thing that happened, but it was definitely a gradual, step-by-step, baby steps, just small things building on each other. When I did start, again, Taylor was kind of the push I needed, but I wasn't doing it just for her. I had to make sure I was doing it for me. I wanted to do it because I believed in it. So really what kind of got me started was Taylor, but then after that it was, well, if this gospel is true, if it is the truth, I should at least give it a shot. And if it's not, and then it's okay, it's not going to work out. So I kind of went into it thinking like, yeah, I want to do this because I want to figure out if this church is for me. And if me and Taylor don't end up together, regardless if I become a member or not, then it'll work out. Like, I totally believe everything happens for a reason. But I had some of those comments that people would tell her, like, while we were dating after that, she probably heard so many things that she has never told me, but the biggest one was probably everyone was like, oh, he's doing it for the wrong reasons, or I don't think it's going to work out. It'll never work out. Which I knew it bugged her a lot more than me. For me, it was, I really don't care what people think. I know I'm doing it for my reasons. I'm walking my own path. You haven't been in my own shoes. Like, it's okay. Like, if you were in my own shoes, you'd kind of know what we're going through. But yeah, on top of that, I
used to be a long distance runner, and I used to sometimes go on marathon training runs, and on a cloudy morning I would wake up when it was completely dark, and then eventually after a 2 or 3 hour run it would be completely light, and if it was cloudy I didn't know even when the sun came over the horizon. And sometimes when I talk to people joining the church, it's like that. They just suddenly they realize it's 8 a.m, it's completely light, but as they look back they can't even kind of say this is when it happened. And so maybe that's what your conversion story is. You just realized at some point it's 8 o'clock in the morning, it's light, and this is where I belong. And you realize how different it was from when you started running, when at 5 a.m. it was pitch black. And so I think that's the way a lot of revelation works. And I think culturally we sometimes celebrate the light switch moments that Elder Bednar talks about, the real dramatic.
Yeah, I'm jealous of those guys.
Same. But most of my experiences are like yours. And I think God knows when we need a light switch, but he probably knew you well enough, Kasey, that knew that you, as you just went along this road, and it doesn't make your commitment to the church any different than the light switch guys, where your testimony is less valid, but it just, God knew you well enough that this is how personal revelation worked for you.
Right.
Yeah, I have 2 thoughts about that. So one of them being that this was really hard throughout the process, but I learned which maybe most people know this, but you can't put a timeline on someone's conversion. I would often be like, okay, so like you'll do this by next month, right? Or you'll do this we'll get married at this point, right? You know? And I quickly learned that wasn't the best approach. I often even had people say, so like if Kasey isn't doing something in like 2 months, are you going to you probably should part ways, right? And that didn't feel right, because I didn't feel like I was giving his conversion a chance. I felt like I was saying, okay, do this, you'll figure out it's true, I promise. But also, if I were to back out after that, like, I feel like I didn't feel like that was genuine or thoughtful or true. And I often think if I would have actually done that, what would have happened? But you can't put a timeline on your own conversion or anyone else's, because it's not going to happen that way. God knows how it's going to happen, and he has that designed out. He has certain people in your life. He has your conversion for the timeline it is for a reason. And it bugged me a lot when people would say, so if he doesn't do anything in 2 months, are you going to like start dating other people? And I'd always get really mad and be like, no.
Yeah, good for you. I love that you had the spiritual foundation, the maturity to not respond to all those voices, but to respond to your heart and the personal revelation you were getting, and not the cultural expectations of how relationships are supposed to unfold or how a conversion. You've got 2 things you're managing here: the timeline of a conversion that is different for everybody, like you just so well said, and the timeline for your own relationship. Talk about the engagement. What day did you get engaged?
It was August 26th.
You got it pinned down.
August 26th.
I'm not sure I remember the day I got engaged. I know the day I got married. But
yeah. Sorry, to answer your question earlier, and I'll kind of build up to that, but
good.
Are you saying, like, was it gradual? What is it, a gradual conversion or like an aha moment? Definitely never had an aha moment. So even when I started going to church, it still took me 2 to 3 months to kind of feel comfortable and like I actually did belong. What really got me was the building kind of those relationships, making new friends, and kind of going through the process. Like you said, it was, I can't even think, sorry, I lost it, but everything kind of happened really gradually. I definitely had to take an action before I kind of got like, not really an answer, but kind of a better feeling about moving forward with it. Definitely, it took like a year and a half for me to decide that I wanted the priesthood. And from there, it kind of took those actions to kind of keep building upon that, where after I got the Aaronic priesthood, and then it took another 6 months to get, or I don't know, 4 to 6 months to get the Melchizedek. And then it was about 4 months after that. I think it was August of 2017 where I kind of decided, all right, this is where I'm making my decision. And I prayed about like whether Taylor was the one that I should marry for, not it had to be like 6 months to a year before that. And I never really got too big of an answer, but the main answer I got is you could choose to marry anybody and it could work out. And that's what it really came down to. And I knew that I loved her and I was comfortable with her. So from there, I decided to kind of move forward with that. And from there, I ended up surprising her.
Good.
Unless, do you want to explain it? Or so I'm a big elaborate planner. So I'm really big on surprises. So I decided that I was going to take her shooting, and her family came up with a good idea to make big targets that with like random things on it. Will you marry me? Or I think the one that we ended up coming with the big picture of a ring on it, and then like a question mark next to it. And so we took her out. It was like right before sundown, so it was kind of a rush to get everything out and the guns all out to start target shooting. And I gave her some binoculars to look at the targets while her 2 sisters were shooting, and we're like, hey, look at the targets to see if they hit the bullseye.
Great idea.
And she was like looking at the targets. She couldn't really make out what they were for a minute, and then like one sign said red mango yogurt boy on it, and then another one was, I can't even remember what the other ones were, but the main one was a ring with a question mark, and she looked at it for like 3 seconds, and then she finally turned around, and I was behind her on one knee with it was a ring pop, because the ring that I ordered still hadn't come after like 2 or 3 weeks, so I ended up just improvising and then
That's fine.
giving her the ring later. But it was fun.
The couples that shoot together stay together.
I like that. That's gonna be my new slogan.
I know a few. One of the things I wanted to add, and you said such a great prayer. I don't know if I mentioned that, Kasey, before we started, but what's it like to be someone who didn't serve a mission in church? Do people come up to you and say, where did you go on your mission?
Oh, all the time. I get that question all the time. Even when I worked at Red Mango, people would ask me where I shared my mission. But
how does that make you feel? Not
too bad. I mean, like maybe first when they started asking, I was like, yeah, like not feeling that I don't feel included, but I'm used to it around here. People, I just kind of like, yeah, I didn't serve a mission. And it's kind of more awkward for them to ask it because they're like, oh.
Do you feel like a second-class Mormon, or do you feel like your chance to serve is different, or are you at peace with this?
I guess sometimes, like initially it was, you could say I kind of felt like a second-class, how'd you explain it?
Latter-day Saint, or I guess I said Mormon.
No, yeah. At first it was kind of like that, but again, it didn't really bother me. More is, like you said, I kind of have a different path. I have a different way to go. I'm okay with not serving a mission, but it definitely, I know for a lot of people, it kind of bothers them, or around here, people just automatically, everyone kind of goes on a mission. But
yeah, it's one of the things I love about your story, and I just want to lift anybody's burden that didn't serve a mission and is an active member of our church. And I have to think if we could pull up another mic and have God on this podcast, that he would say, that would be cool.
Can you arrange that?
I wish. And he would say, this is my plan. And he would say, Kasey, my plan was, this is the plan we talked about. I knew you never serve a mission. That wasn't your plan. but you would develop all these Christ-like attributes that you saw in this guy, separate from serving a mission, and the goodness and his Christ-like attributes in Preach My Gospel, chapter 6. You don't know chapter 6 of Preach My Gospel, but it teaches how to develop Christ-like attributes, and it doesn't mean that people that haven't served missions don't have those. And that's what you saw as you fell in love with this guy. And then I would say, as you're going forward, I don't think you need this advice, but don't ever see yourself as different or not, or your personal experience or your ability to help a young man or a fellow elder or teach a doctrinal class. You may not know as many scriptures, but you know the doctrine of Christ. And to change people's lives, you need to know how to love them and how to give them hope and how to bring them to Christ. And you know how to do that. You both know how to do that. So I think you're a teacher's quorum advisor right now, Kasey, and I just think if I had a teacher, I would love him to be in your class, because I sense the kind of man you are, the journey you've had, falling in love with Taylor, and that's just the kind of role model I want for my own son. So for you, and I kind of use you as an example, if there's listeners out there that think for any reason you're a second-class member of our church because you missed one of these check boxes, don't do that. That is that's living below your privileges, to use Elder Uchtdorf's term. You have the priesthood, you have a patriarchal blessing, you're under the temple covenants, and your ability to do everything Heavenly Father wants for you is right in front of you. And even though somebody might think differently culturally because you didn't have that 2-year experience, that's just not the plan. And kudos for you, Taylor, for not seeing him by just the checklist and seeing who he really is. Thoughts on all this as we're winding up? Any concluding thoughts or the thoughts you want to share, Taylor?
Yeah, so some that came to mind as you were talking were with Kasey's journey of coming to believe in the gospel. We often have conversations about belief versus knowledge, and there's many times still discussions about how Kasey says, well, I believe in this, but I don't know. And it makes me think of Elder Holland's talk a while back with that boy who came to him saying, I only believe, but I don't know. And I think it's somewhere in DNC, maybe like in 46. Okay. 46. Okay. It talks about spiritual gifts, and it says right after another, to some it is given to know, to some it is given to believe. It doesn't say you must know, but if you believe, you're okay, but knowing is best, right? And they're both, to know and to believe are both spiritual gifts. They're both after that, it even says that you may profit thereby. They're spiritual gifts given to us for reasons that we don't know and are still discovering, but it's a blessing to believe and be able to believe in something without knowing. It's a blessing to know things. And I mean, everyone has to practice faith in this gospel. It's not just the people who know or the people who struggle with their testimony, but I would hope that through this story too, that people can hear that if you believe, it's enough. And you can still be an active member in the church. You can still get married in the temple. You're worthy of all the blessings that God provides. You don't have to know everything. You don't even have to. I mean, you can even believe in maybe one thing and still be worthy of that. It's not conditional on the amount of faith or knowledge you have. And I think that's Elder Holland's talk as well, as he mentions that it's not the amount of faith you have, but it's the integrity at which you go about putting action to your faith. It's that integrity in which you handle your faith. And I found that to be super reassuring through our relationship, in reassuring to me at where I'm at, to where he's at, and how that knowledge has helped us come together more and understand. Though we are married, we do have our own individual journeys, but recognizing those things about each other is really helpful.
I love that. That's a great conference talk, Taylor. That's something I'm really passionate about is culturally we've normalized the I know the church is true testimony. And I did a Twitter poll one day and got like 1,200 responses. And I said, if you're active temple recommend holder, indicate your level of belief. And 41% said, I know. And the next highest box was, I believe, and then I hope so, and I'm not sure. But I, just like you said, behind every one of those testimonies may be someone doing their very best to stay on the covenant path and to come unto Christ and to do so. I hope we're able to mature as a church where we can sit in a congregation and hear I know and I believe testimonies, and I hope so. Because then if you've got one of those I believe or I hope so testimonies, then you feel like you belong, to use your word, Kasey. You can belong with this type of a testimony, because you're right, that's what the doctrine teaches in D&C. And I don't think someone may go from an I believe to an I know, but it's not, shouldn't be the goal. The goal to me is sort of like, what are you going to do to help to come into Christ? And what are you going to do to lift other people's burdens? And so it shouldn't be like, you always have to move. And so I love that. It's a real mature place to be in that you're both in. And back to, my 14-year-old son, if I had one that young, I don't. If he heard that from a priesthood leader, and I know and I believe the church is true, and this is why I'm in, to me, my son needs to hear that, and daughter, because they need examples of adults in their life that have all types of testimonies, because the youth of our church have all types of testimonies, and I want them to be able to find space to stay. And so that's a beautiful part of your story.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. I was just thinking when you were saying that, I was an EFY counselor for 2 years, and so I experienced that like hands-on, and I was always so frustrated because I had students come that came with questions at the beginning of the week and left with answers, and I was so happy for them, and I was like, the gospel's true, like EFY works, that kind of thing. EFY is
awesome.
Yeah. But then I was also so frustrated because I was like, okay, Kasey and I have been trying to figure this out for 4 years at this point, and nothing, like, this is how can one person figure this out in a week and it takes the other person like 4 years? But it goes back to different testimonies, different timelines, different plans, different paths. And though it was frustrating in the moment, I knew that because these people were getting answers, these youth at EFY, with the purest of hearts, like that Kasey would too.
And I think it adds to your marriage and your ability to be great parents and local leaders. A little bit of difference here and a little different journey. You joining the church, you growing up in the church, and I'm imagining the future discussions you're going to have with your kids as they're able to talk to you and have very healthy but different perspectives about how you both found your way and how you may have a believe and I know, but you're both equally committed. And I think that may be beautiful chapters in your life for your own kids or grandkids, just to say, oh, that's how it works. So, Kasey, any final thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, especially for people trying to figure out if the church is for them, it's definitely not an easy path. Everyone kind of hears a story like that, they're like, oh yeah, he found his testimony like right away. It definitely was not like that. It was really hard. Like we mentioned before, it's a really gradual process, but the thing that kept me going was like the word I love that you used was faith. Like my whole testimony is pretty much based on faith. I still don't know the church is true, but I believe it is.
It's cool you just say that out loud.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But it really is that faith that keeps you going. If you just got to keep taking the actions to keep moving forward, and that doesn't mean like day by day, like every day you got to do something. It's small things. It could be every 2 or 3 months to a year to 2 years. Just don't stop moving forward. But with that, I keep losing my train of thought. But the overall thing is, don't compare yourself to someone else's testimony. You are on your own path. It could take, like Taylor was mentioning, it could take a year, it could take 2 years. Everyone's on their own timing. So as long as you're just putting the faith forward and giving it a chance. That's all that really matters. I remember while I was getting back into the church, reading scriptures, there was so many times that me and Taylor not really had arguments, but rough times where I would read something that just didn't make sense to me. And I know I kept her up at night, but just, I can't even remember, just especially in the Isaiah chapters of the Bible or Second Nephi, that just never made sense to me. And it kind of discouraged me a little bit. I knew I would keep trying, but it was like, am I good enough to understand this, or will I ever understand this?
That's pretty honest. Am I good enough to understand this?
Right. And then another thing that bugged me was, I mean, that could open up a whole other door, but just the views on or LGBTQ and some of the social issues. The letters that it's in it.
It took me a while to get them all in the right order.
It's like, am I saying the right order? But just, that was a big one, because I'm big on love, just loving one another and accepting everybody for who they are. So that was one thing that was kind of a block in the road, but just showing faith, eventually those kind of feelings, what's a good way to say it? Those discouraging feelings kind of dissipated, and further down the road, it's like, well, you'll figure out, you'll understand later. Don't worry about this now, but
it's okay.
Just, you got to keep pushing forward.
I think it's okay to just say, as part of our faith journeys, things that are difficult for us. And a lot of your age group, it is doctrine to love everybody and support everybody. And when you see a marginalized group like LGBTQ, a lot of more your age, perhaps than my age, although that may not be true. I'm sorry if I've got any listeners my age, that I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but your age group just knows more LGBTQ people, and it's hard to hate people that you know close up when you see their gifts and their attributes and their goodness, and it's hard to villainize a group that you know firsthand.
Right.
And so I love the way you process that and sort of put it on the shelf and say it's something that still may be unsettling for me, but I just have faith that I'll understand more, and as a church we'll continue to make progress on this issue. I love this. I read this a lot. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who you are. So you've had to grow, Kasey. So it's not like you didn't change at all in this process, but you still have managed to belong without, and I know the church is true with every fiber of my being testimony, and without serving a mission.
Right.
And that, to me, is the gospel of Jesus Christ, is to help us all belong the way we are without having us to sort of assess a culture, assess a situation, and become something we aren't just to fit in. And that's not sustainable. And so that's one of the things I love about your story, is I think it gives space for other people when they're trying to do the right thing and come unto Christ and make progress, that, that's okay.
Right.
And that's awesome, in fact. So we'll give you the last word, Taylor.
That's pressure. Mainly that, I don't know, I am grateful that my path was a little bit outside the norm.
Cool.
Because it was what I needed. It's what I grew in ways I didn't know I needed to. I learned a lot. I found like my best friend. But it was not an easy path in the slightest. But I learned all those things and found Kasey because it wasn't easy. If it was a walk in the park, I wouldn't be here. So I hope to be an encouraging voice to listeners who feel like their moment won't come, or that the things they want are too far-fetched, or that hope is lost. Because the main thing I've learned through this process is that if we, which maybe other people know at this point, but if you do all you can to do your best to do what the Lord would have you do, keep the commandments, things will work out as they're supposed to, as God would have them, and in a way that will help you grow and become the person you need to be. It's a molding process. It's uncomfortable, but it's incredibly rewarding. I remember after 5 years of dating, us sitting in the ceiling room across
Salt Lake City Temple.
Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I remember saying a small prayer to God, just saying thank you.
Can you believe this is happening?
Yeah, I think I even said that out loud across the altar. I was like, is this even happening right now? But that moment was a moment I'll never forget. I have a mental picture of it in my brain because I was so grateful to God. I was grateful to Kasey for giving the gospel his all, figuring out his relationship with Christ. I was thankful to be in that place after all that work. It was 100% worth it. And yeah, that's...
That was only 5 years. That was not that long. We could have won another 10.
Yeah, right.
So, what a great way to end at the temple and kneeling across the altar. And Kasey, thank you. And Taylor, thank you. The Cordovas, if I said your last name right.
Yep,
You got it.
And for joining us on another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love. This is Richard Osler signing off.